All right, guys, welcome back to episode 13 of Vibe Trading. Today I have on Tactical. He's a guy who's been posting some really good takes on the current market that I've been seeing recently. So I thought I would get him on to speak a bit about his background, his trading strategy, and current thoughts on the market and future outlook. Thank you very much for coming on, Tactical. If you want to maybe give a little intro about yourself for the guys who don't know you.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me on. So I got back into crypto in 2022, 2023. It was pretty much the end of that bull run with like NFTs and shit. And because I got into it so late, I still saw the potential to make money and I knew I would make money in the next cycle. But the biggest thing that I identified was so many people round tripping their gains. And the thing is, like, this isn't the first thing that I've done. Like, I've been in business and making money online since I was 16, 17. So I've been through the ringer. So I can recognize, like, I can recognize a lot of stuff pretty quickly. And again, the biggest issue, especially for first time, like, cycle, people like in the cycle for the first time, were preserving their gains. So I pretty much dedicated my time to learning macro because I knew I would make money this cycle. Like I didn't know how, but I knew I would do it. So started off with macro, got me into perps, started trading perps. And at the time, I was kind of bouncing between that and a business I was running. And unfortunately, like the business I was doing, it was kind of siphoning off a lot of my funds, and it was just like a big thing. So I didn't have the necessary capital to really trade perps like with my own money unless I wanted to go the prop firm route. But I didn't want to do that really. So this was kind of a perfect storm because right as like my business was kind of like falling apart, I was kind of like recognizing like the lack of funds with perps and stuff. This is right when memes became a thing. Like this was like right when like Whiff was taking off. I remember so vividly like Joe Bowden. It was hitting like 400, 500, 600 mil. Like it was peak. So I transitioned into memes and I basically grinded that for gosh, like basically like a year, year and a half. Um, and as I was making money in memes, I would still go back to perps and just keep like depoting money into perps and just make trades on the side. And then basically, as I made a lot of money in memes, I basically took a very large percentage of that and just put it back into perps. And then from there, I just basically am where I'm at now, where I basically do perps full time. Uh, and yeah, it's awesome. I'm super thankful actually for like going through that entire thing and basically just being at the right place at the right time. Because I think that's another thing a lot of people don't realize is like people kind of they're like, oh, like I miss memes, and like then you just miss waves. Like there's a big ecom wave in like 2018 to 2020. Then there was like B2B, and then there's all like you just kind of have to be at the right place at the right time, right? There will always be an opportunity to make money. You just have to be in that right place at the right time, and I just happened to be there when memes were starting to pop off and capitalized on it, made a bunch of money. And because I studied macro and like I already knew like how to trade perps really well, I preserved majority of my gains. In fact, I actually made money where a lot of people didn't make money. Like when Sol was at 270, like that was when I was sailing everything and shorting. Like when Bitcoin was coming up to 120, 125K, that was when I was stable and I was shorting everything. Um, so yeah, I'm pretty thankful for the path I took because I pretty much identified the one thing that people struggled with, like the biggest after making money in the cycle for the first time, all the way back in 2022. And I was pretty proud of the fact that the one thing I set out to do, which were to preserve my gains that I knew I would make, I ended up doing. I kept pretty much majority of them.
Very nice.
So
And the gains that you
yeah.
made initially before going into perps on the meme side, was that just from, buying things that you were bullish on early on? Obviously, that was a different time in the market where things genuinely did 100x and you could actually size into them appropriately, or, were you a bit more like short term? Maybe just very briefly, like what were you doing on the Solana meme side?
No, dude, this was a totally different time. Dude, this was like a time whenever like people were still deploying like through Radium. Like like the like pump fund was just becoming a thing. Like it was wild, right? So No, I was certainly trading, and this is actually people talk about like insider trading, like that doesn't really exist in the same way it did back then. Like there was genuine insider info back then in the sense of like nowadays you pretty much just have like KOLs or people on like whole scan buying your farms or just like buying a coin and then bring a bunch of volume to it. Or just like one FNF kind of it's like a group of guys that are like streamers, let's say, and they just like all buy a coin, decide to push it. Like that's kind of like the info you have nowadays. Like back then it was so different and I was 100% trading. I remember specifically like I made a bunch of money on like Epic Duck. I No, I actually didn't make that much money on Joe Bowden. It was Epic. Michi, I made a bunch of money on Michi. There was another coin on ETH that was called Andy. I made a bunch on that. I was actually like at the time I had like my own FNF just with like my friends and shit. And I was telling them to buy Andy from like 70 mil. And that shit went all the way up to like 350 mil almost. I didn't hold like all the way up till there, like what I originally had, but it was wild. Nowadays though, it's so different. I made a pretty decent chunk when I was like genuinely trading, in like 2024, going into late 2024, and then that's basically when AI became a thing. And this is honestly like when I started to make a lot of money because I am already like a fucking nerd. So I already knew like what GitHub was. Um, I know how to code. So like I already knew all the stuff that people were looking for before like it even became like a trend. So I made so much money during AI and then pretty much finished it off with Trump, which I didn't make as much as I should have. I remember this so vividly, dude. Me and my friends, it was yeah, three of us total. We were all in VC. We saw Trump launch, and my friend he knows like Banditos, like the sniping group, like he knows them, and like he was trying to verify like if this was like real, because like Biz sniped it, and like they were first TX, like they made so much money off that. And I remember like we all bought at like 350 to 400 um like mil or yeah, it was right around there. It was like 350, 450. It was like somewhere in there. And I remember I didn't buy like with a ton of size. I bought like I think like 270, 300 Solana, like something like around there. And bro, me and my friend, we were so bullish. We were like, this is totally fucking real. And our other friend didn't buy and he was fudding us and we saw the dev sold and this guy was like, ha, see, I told you like it was fake, bro. So me and my friend we both sold and then it turns out it was fucking real, dude. And then we had to rebuy with so much more size. So I still made like a bunch of money off of it, but like if I held, I would have legit made like mid eight figs. Like if I sold like Pico top, which I probably wouldn't have, but yeah,
Yeah,
that was
Trump.
wild. That was like really my last big meme trade.
Yeah, Trump was like the last the last major meme play and pretty much the full kind of top on Solana in many ways.
Mm-hmm.
You were saying just before we started recording also how you basically shorted around like 115 Bitcoin. So maybe let's like transition to the perp side of things in terms of how you said you kind of already had some skills in terms of trading perps. You know, how did you actually kind of go about that and you know maybe some of the like challenges actually like becoming a good perp trader, and how that kind of led to you to you know short around pretty much you know close to cycle top.
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, and this is, I know a lot of both our audiences actually are like from the trenches, like memes and stuff. I think a lot of people approach perps with the totally wrong mindset because they basically just look at a chart and say it's a bunch of squiggly lines on a chart and it doesn't mean anything. And in reality, I will make this analogy, right? If you're a meme coin trader now, right, you look at how much the dev owns, you look at the bundle, you look at how many wallets are in the bundle, how much the bundle owns, did Centid buy, did Eurus buy, what's the name, what's the ticker, like all these different variables, right? And all of these variables cause you to either buy or not buy a meme coin. And if you don't understand these variables, then chances are you're not going to be a very successful long-term meme coin trader. And it's the same exact thing with perps, but the variables are just different. So instead of how much does the bundle hold, how much does the dev own? It's what's my market structure? Where's the supply? Where's the demand? What's the context? High time frame, mid time frame, low time frame, right? Like all of these different variables. It's the same thing with memes. It's just a very different way to approach it. Like, you see what I'm saying? And I think because of that, a lot of meme coin traders, honestly, I know a lot of traders that would actually be very good perps traders, but because they don't see the value in actually learning it as a skill and recognize that it's a skill that you have to learn, just like you learned memes, a lot of people come into this and just basically get rinsed because they're trading off like a tingly feeling in their balls, and that doesn't work long term. You might get lucky for like a few trades, but eventually you're just going to get zeroed out.
Yeah, for
So,
sure.
in terms of how I shorted the top, or not really the top, but because the top was like 126. So pretty much since call it September, October, I was pretty bearish on Bitcoin as a whole. And like I don't want to turn this into like a 1 hour lesson here, but pretty much if you look at Bitcoin, every time it's from the start of the bull market, right down here, every time it's basically had a expansion, a mid-cycle pullback, and then an expansion, right? So every single expansion really up to this point has been around 90 to 100%, yeah? Or like 80 to 90%. The first sign of weakness that I was seeing is how this expansion was basically half of that. And this is kind of when alarm bells started going off in my head. And I also track like money flow. And I was looking at the data. I'm just like, it's it's not looking good. Like it's really not looking good. I also apply like time to my trades in terms of high time frame. So I have like a bigger, like higher time frame cycle hidden. But whenever I was looking at this like in real time, this was suggesting that there was going to be a peak in the bull market somewhere in Q4, like somewhere around October, November, December, somewhere in this area, there's going to be probably a peak. And so whenever Bitcoin hit 126, like I didn't short this or anything. I shorted here like 115. And I saw this triple drive. And this was right when we were coming into FOMC. And I was basically like, okay, there is let me like describe it like this way, right? If you're trading, right, this is your asset. You have range low as support and range high as resistance, right? And price basically consolidates in here, and this creates your range, right? Now, context is super important because you have three different time frames that people really look at. You have low time frame, you have mid time frame, you have high time frame, right? And so a lot of people basically get super caught up on the low time frame, like looking at the 15-minute chart or the 1 hour chart, because if basically like let's say this is your MS where you're basically in an uptrend, a lot of people might look at what's going on in here and like on a lower time frame and see that the market structure is actually bearish, when in reality this is like internal market structure to your higher like external MS, like your market structure, right? So people will look at this and be like, oh, like this asset's cooked, like it's bearish, like it's going down. And in reality, like the asset will just do this, right? And they'll get blown out. And then obviously like the inverse will happen if you're in a downtrend and people are like trying to long it. And I was looking at Bitcoin, and basically I was treating Bitcoin in a couple ranges. So I was treating basically 84 to 107, basically this section right here, as one big range where this is your range low and this is your range high. And I was treating 107 to 116 as another range. So basically this being your range low and this being your range high. And basically I was looking at this entire move as basically an an extreme like push out of the main range before being pushed back inside. Okay.
Yeah, like one big
And so,
deviation.
yeah. And so when we were coming in FOMC, this was a very big decision point because this was not only like range high of this main range, but this also was it on the weekly I was looking at this? Yeah, on the weekly, if you could flip this and get above like 119, you can start targeting like higher. You can start targeting because originally people call me like super, super bearish. And I think people forget like that are close to me and like my circle. I was originally targeting like back in the summer, like I was targeting, Bitcoin ideally to come to like 130 to 145, right? Um, and so I basically, whenever we were coming into this point, I run like a free group. Like everything is free in my group, and all this is verifiable. I gave a giant thesis on why I'm shorting here with a large amount of size, because I think the other thing that people don't realize when they're trading perps is like they'll do this classic thing, right? Let's say like we're ranging here, and people will do like the classic like, okay, if we get above this level, then it's going to go up. And if we break below this level, then it's going to go down. And people basically like to meme this and say like, oh, so basically they're saying, it's going to go up or down, like, be for real. Um, and so the thing is, is like, bro, what even is this? Okay. Um, the thing is like people don't understand like especially when you're looking at like higher time frame levels. If Bitcoin flipped this 116 resistance back to support, the next like logical order flow objective is to go to the next range high, right? Which would be like somewhere up here. Because basically, like if you have an asset, like let's say basically you have an asset right here. Okay, this is range low, this is range high, and you break one of these. Order flow objective is to go to the next POI, right? So in this case, it's going to be the range low. And the inverse, of course, is if you have a POI up here and price flips resistance, the next order flow objective is to come to the next POI, which is the next range high. So I was looking at this, and I literally like went like this on the server. I gave two scenarios. I was like a long here, and a short here. And not to like to be a meme, I was literally saying like, okay, if Bitcoin is in a bear market, which this is a very probable top because we have a triple drive, which for people that don't know, on like a higher time frame, a triple drive is very significant sign of a reversal from either like in this case, obviously like a bearish reversal, but this can also be like a bullish reversal with FOMC and everything, and also like time cycles and everything else that I track. I was like, okay, it's very probable this was very likely the top, and so I'm going to go very heavy into the short. If I get blown out on this short, then I can just make it all back on a long. That's going to target all time high. So I shorted here, and sure enough, Bitcoin just rolled over, right? And this was actually a huge in terms of market structure on the weekly. This is actually a very key swing high, and so from here we were basically looking at 107K. And I always talk about this with people. Whenever you are trading an asset, okay, and you basically get a break of structure, there will always be a pullback before the continuation, right? Always has to be a pullback. It will either be a pullback directly to the level that it broke structure, or just slightly above it, in this case, forming like a higher low, okay? So in this case, obviously, like the inverse is true. Whenever price basically flipped this at the time you're trading in this range. So whenever price flipped this 107 support into resistance, we had the retest. And from here, I gave another short. I was like, okay, we're basically going to short 107. We're going to target all the way to 84 because this is the range low. And price literally just nuked. And this is also why, if you go back on my Twitter, I was telling people, do not expect a reversal at 98 to 100K. And there's a few reasons for this. One, like it's in the higher time frame context, like um, this was a major OB. Like like anytime Bitcoin basically like comes into a major like high time frame like OB like this, whenever you're slicing, like you always get like the aggressive like move through it. And I was telling people like just from like a logical perspective, right? Like if you're trading, like if this is your range, okay, if this is your range that the asset is trading in, you are not going to expect any sort of major reversal from the middle of your range, right? So this is basically like what I call fair value. So fair value being like, for lack of like, just to simplify it for people, this is basically where all the chop happens, right? Like you do not want to be trading in fair value, and there's no actual how do I phrase this? There's no change of there's no trend change unless like one of these levels is broken, right? So anything in like fair value is just noise, right? And so I was looking at this and I was telling people like on the timeline and also in my server, like don't expect a reversal from here. Like yes, is a major this is a major supply area, so you can expect a bit of a bounce from here. But this is like very low time frame. Like this is something like you can scalp in like a day, and sure enough, that's pretty much uh, more or less what we got. Actually, I don't even think. Yeah, if I go on like super low time frame, we take a little bit of a bounce. But like in the higher time frame context, we just slice through this and price carried all the way to the range low. And this is also why I was telling people not to expect a reversal at 93K, because one, not only is this directly in the middle of your range, but this is also okay. So a lot of people were super bullish on basically this supply cluster right here, basically expecting a price to reverse from here. So basically, people were looking for this. One, like I just said, you're not going to expect that from the middle of your range. But two, it was very evident that all of the demand, all of the buyers left this area due to this aggressive retest. Okay, as soon as we got this retest and we broke this 100K level, which is the weekly, as soon as we retested this, I knew that basically as soon as this level gets retested again in a significant manner, it's just going to slice through. And sure enough, we got test 1, 2, 3. On the fourth, we got the slice through. And I just knew from like a higher time frame perspective, this was not going to basically give people the reversal that they wanted. And it was also the same thing. Let's see. It was also the same thing. Let's see. Right here at 70. No, sorry, not right here. It was right here at 80K. So basically, when we had this wick right here at 80K, a lot of people were basically treating this, basically treating like, call it this as the range. Okay, so they were treating this as range low and this is range high. And I was telling people like this is not good. Like if price decides to take out this wick, this is probably going to be the move where you get to slice through the wick and you're just going to continue the move down. And I even said that like I must have said that for 5 weeks straight in every single weekly stream in my server. I said this in countless calls. I think I even said this at one point on Twitter. I'm not really sure. But sure enough, whenever I think it was on like 1 hour. Yeah, 1 hour. As soon as we basically took that wick, no, it wasn't even here. It was sorry, right here. As soon as we took this wick, we got a very slight bounce and then just the continuation down to the next range low. So, your original question was basically, how did I short what most people consider like near the Pico top? And it was just a simple observation of one, combining time suggesting basically a macro top right in Q4, along with the fact that basically every expansion out of the mid-cycle pullback was getting weaker and weaker and weaker, which suggests money flow is like money is leaving the market. There's not enough money entering the market to sustain these prices. On top of this being such a big event with FOMC at the time, this is basically just where I was like, okay, it's a very obvious level 116K. It's either make it or break it here for me. Like if you don't make it here, you're just going to continue all the way down. And originally, I actually was targeting 74K. My original target, like for the short, for basically up until basically we got this nuke, was 74K because, like most people, I did expect 74K to provide a reversal. But as soon as I saw the weakness that we were getting here, and we were basically just not, we were just consolidating around this range low support, like at the time. I literally pinged my server and I was like, yeah, this is going so much lower, dude. Like our next POI at the time was either it was 60. I was targeting like 68, I think, because I was on the weekly. Yeah, I was targeting like 68. I was targeting basically this cluster right here, or I was targeting I think at the time I was targeting it's right around like 62, 64K.
Like mid range
Um,
of the previous kind of range back then.
mhm. Yeah. And sure enough, that's basically like what we got. We got the bottom right at basically like if you look at the daily, we have a candle close at like 62, 63K.
And how are you then kind of looking at this current range, given especially for example like the wick down to 60 and the rejection off of the attempt to like break out of the top of the current range being so similar to the previous one at kind of the 80 uh, 90K range, and I think
Mhm.
also like the shorting the top was I think this time was slightly more um, obvious from a timing perspective, like 4 year cycle or not, like it pretty much played out like to a T in terms of that kind of October Q4 top. But now I think we have a lot more concern around the macro, what's happening in the world in terms of like conflicts, and also in terms of the SPX and like general stock market actually breaking down properly for the first time in a while. I know I definitely lean towards there being like at least like another major low on BTC, and probably another like 6 months of general bear. But how are you looking at this current range that we're in now?
Right. So this is for macro, right? If you're a full-time trader, you have to look at other markets, right? It's the same thing with memes. People don't only trade on Sol, they go on BNB, they go on ETH, God forbid. But you're trading other chains, right? And it's the same thing with when you're a full-time trader. Crypto is just one market, and people don't like to admit it, but crypto is like any other market. It's manipulative and it is not made for you to win. Okay. Because of that, every market more or less moves in sync. Okay. So when people are talking about like an SPX correction, and I've even said this in my server, like in streams and in my channel, I am not surprised by the SPX correction because I was expecting it. Like, if you also look at like the NAS, which we'll look in a second, um, I was also expecting that. Like, I have basically been telling people that I'm close with and my own circle, and my own group, and whatnot, that we have basically we can expect to enter a bear market. I was telling people that like around November, and sure enough, like it's here. The only exception is like metals. I was telling some people back in September and October to start stacking up on gold and silver. But I think that's more of like an obvious call, which I don't really want to like focus too much on, because I think most people that look at macro and can kind of see like or could see the way the world was going, they could point to go metals and energy and be like, yeah, these are gonna go on a run. It's like no shit. So I don't want to focus too much on that. But um, in terms of what was like the original question again?
Sort of just like how do you feel about the current range we're in, and like how it's going to play out? Does it play out exactly like the
Cool.
prior range, just above where, because it looks almost identical right now, would it indicate that we're just going to break
Right.
down the next leg here, or do you look at it any differently?
Yeah, no. So it's pretty much the same as last time, the last like uh 1, 2, 3 moves down. In the sense of okay, so this is really your like high time frame support. Yeah, like of the current range. So basically like this entire if I go like on 2 day, it makes it a bit simpler. Basically like this entire cluster here, right? The thing is that the demand for this range is sat external, which is this wick. Okay. So what I'm doing is I'm basically treating the current range. I'm basically treating this as the range low and this is the range high, because that's exactly what happened over here. And I always like to tell people what happens on the left will happen on the right. Okay. So in terms of what I'm expecting, it's hard to give like the exact prediction, and that's not really what a trader's job is. I think the other thing that people get confused by, especially meme coin traders, is that it's our job to basically predict exactly where price is going to go, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Reality is that no one knows where the market's going to go, and anyone that tells you that an asset is going to go to exactly X price by Y time is full of shit. No one can do that unless basically you're a market maker. So the thing is, because I track not just crypto, but I track other markets, specifically like the Nas, the VIX, which is like the volatility index for the S&P, and then I track assets that move directly with Bitcoin, but that are outside of crypto. So, for example, like mining stocks, MSTR, Coin, so like Coinbase. They basically all suggest a low incoming, like right around May. And if I like pop over to gold, for example, here, it's really the same thing. If I look at this on like a macro perspective, um, gold is suggesting, its first correction, along with metals as a whole, right around May. Right. If I look at the VIX, which I have somewhere over here, the VIX is suggesting the same thing. It's suggesting basically somewhere around late April to early May. If I look at the NAS, it is basically suggesting the same thing. Right around, actually, this is a bit later. This is like late May, right? So, because there are a bunch of markets and a bunch of assets that are basically all suggesting the same thing, and these more or less move in the same manner. Like I love how people say like, oh, like alt seasons here and like alt outperform Bitcoin. Like yes, that's true, but only on like a lower time frame perspective, right? Like yes, alts will outperform Bitcoin for like a few weeks or like a month or two. But if you actually look at like a 2 month to 3 month time frame, everything hits their range high at the same time, and everything hits their range low at the same time, right? Like Bitcoin is king. That's why like I really only track like Bitcoin in depth. I really like only go off of Bitcoin for like what I'm looking at in terms of like the crypto market, macro wise. So it's very possible that this was the top. Right now, me personally, I even told people like on Twitter, like this has been my range high since forever, and I told people like Bitcoin is going to move into 76 to 78K, and this is when you want to take a short. Okay. I was personally actually looking for a bit higher. I was really looking for Bitcoin to take out this here on the 1 day, like between 76.7 and 78K. If you go in the 12 hour, it basically just grabbed the 12-hour OB and basically just nuked from here. And this would really be like our third AMD schematic, which is basically like, I don't know if you've seen this before, basically like accumulation, right? Manipulation, and then like distribution, basically suggesting that when you're contained within your range, this is basically just a deviation of the main range before popping back inside, right? So if that is true, then there's only really two scenarios I really am seeing right now with Bitcoin, in my opinion. So let me go on the daily. So this daily OB right here, okay. I was looking for basically this to be the first major reversal point for Bitcoin, like in the last few days, right? And the issue is we have gotten 4 hour acceptance within this OB, which is super, super, super bearish. Okay. So because of that, in my opinion, it's more likely that Bitcoin comes up a bit higher, takes the supply, moves a bit lower, and then maybe we flag up to like 70K, 72K into April, and then we just roll over and move to the range low of this range, which is going to be most likely it'll take out this wick for sure. And from there, I don't really know. Um, from there, it's like you can consolidate at mid 50s, and then we have the move higher into summer, and then you get the move lower into August. Because that's the other thing too. Because I track macro, we have like another sell off with the VIX in August, and so this is going to be like there's three major sell offs this year, right? April, right around August, and then December. Okay. So this entire move down was nothing more than like a mid-cycle pullback. Like this was not actually a major sell-off in any other market, only really crypto. And it's just because of how fucking weak this like this space is. So the problem with that is that like most people are basically expecting like I don't know like Bitcoin basically to do this, And reality couldn't be further from that. Like it's very unlikely that first off, unless you clear like basically everything up here, like call it 90 to 93K, unless you get above here, you cannot target an all-time high. And really, unless you get above, 78K, you can't possibly target 84K. Now, I do think this comes. It's just kind of a matter of when, right? To me, this right here, okay, this is super bearish.
Yeah, it is
And
super bearish.
yeah, and I think this is currently the least likely scenario or the lesser of the two. I do not, I would be very surprised. Like, I want it to happen because basically, if you look at alts across the board, Sol, ETH, Doge, let me think. That's really all I trade actually. Um, they didn't get to like, well, first off, the targets that I wanted, and they're just so weak. Like, they're so weak. I was actually looking for ETH to move a lot higher. I was looking for it to move, oh my gosh, sorry. I have a fucking I have some bullshit like plugin on for that. I was looking for ETH to move up to, yeah, right here, like basically like this wick here. I was really looking for it to move between like 24 to like 2600, and we didn't even get that actually. If I go on like the 12-hour,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
it
it
was
basically just,
ETH was like particularly strong here. I'm surprised that it didn't. It just wasn't really. I mean, I guess yeah. Crypto is just super weak right now, unfortunately.
well, the other thing that people don't pay attention to is like ETH BTC. So basically, this if I go on the daily, this basically was ranging, and it actually broke out, and then it basically took out this right here, and it's so funny. It's so funny because I literally said to my friend and also the server, I think actually I pinged everyone in general, that this is very possible the top of ETH, and sure enough, like it actually has been. So I was really looking for this to come higher to like 0.326, which would have ideally put ETH originally like where I wanted it, which is right around like uh 20 26 2500 2600. Let me like shut off these plugins, dude. Um, Actually, I just whatever. Just ignore these. Um, but like we didn't even make it up that high. So my thing is like, I do think this is the least likely scenario that we're talking about for Bitcoin in the next like couple weeks. I think it's more likely that we do something like this, right? And then we roll over. Um, and the other thing too that people don't understand is while we do have like a major, sell off in May, and I do think that this is where a new low will come. Like locally speaking, I definitely think we'll take out this wick and we'll probably see mid 50s. Um, Bitcoin, like people have to understand, this was a 200 and almost 250-day range. Okay, so this would put us, yeah. So Bitcoin can basically just chop, basically they just chop here for the next 3 to 4 months, like literally, until you get like another major sell off and then you move lower. Like it can just basically chop in this range, or come a bit lower, come to like mid 50s and basically just chop here, driving people fucking crazy. Because that's the other thing with crypto is every time we go to range high, we have an alt season, and every time we go to range low, there's a black swan, right? Like there's literally been like 6 alt seasons in the last 2 months, right? So like it would be in like I wouldn't be surprised if MM is basically just like chop Bitcoin here for like the next 4 months. And if they honestly do that, okay, I do have like a bias to where eventually like this wick will be taken out. We kind of pop back, we just kind of chop around here. If that happens, in my opinion, so many people are focused right here around like 44K that in my opinion, this is going to turn into like another 72K event where this does not hold at all. I do think that this is not the bare bottom at all. And I do think we'll basically just slice through this and continue lower. Because if I do use the VIX in accordance, and also I will show you this other chart real quick. Um, I believe it's this one. Uh, yeah, it's this one. So this is also just a very, very simple pattern with Bitcoin. This is another reason why I was telling people that it's very likely that we're probably in a bear market, because if I show you, if I go on the just algorithmically, I will show you. So basically, this is the last stage of each cycle: bear market, bear market, bear market, right? This is suggesting somewhere in early 2027. So many people think that the bear bottom is going to come in like October to November. But the other reason, just first off, like you can't really just go off of solely like a historical pattern like this. But the other reason why I have confidence for this is because the VIX actually suggests the same thing. We have another major sell-off in Q4, which would really put like the nail in the coffin for crypto as a whole, in my opinion. Which is why I'm not really in the camp of oh, the bear bottom is going to be like in October. I think that is not going to happen. I do think it's going to come sometime in Q1 2027. Um, so that's like super macro though. Like this is the other thing too. I tell people when they're kind of looking at this stuff is that who really cares? Like who really cares? You just play it level by level. It's like you have a few major key levels here. You have like the mid 50s, you have 44, and then you have like the low 30s, right? And so if price slices through one of these ranges, slice meaning like it flips support to resistance, then you just know it's going for the next level. Like it's no big deal. And I think a lot of people get so caught up on basically being right, and like like their ego gets in the way, or like it's mental masturbation over like all this macro bullshit. And like yeah, like it matters to a degree to know what's going on, but like what really matters is like, are you going to execute the fucking trade? Like, are you going to short Bitcoin all the way down to here, right? And that's the other thing too that kind of like annoys me with perps traders is that there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, like bro, like I called the top. It's like, yeah, okay. Did you hold a short all the way down to at least 74K, or were you like a pussy and you basically TP'd at like 100K? And like probably for every 100 people that quote unquote called the top, one of them actually held a short to like at least 74K, right? So for me, it's like I look at this, man, right? I look at this, and people basically are so fixated on, where the bear bottom is going to be and all this stuff. And it's like, dude, just trade. Like, just trade. You know how many trades were in here, bro? Like this range has been
Oh, I know, it's
fairly easy up
crazy.
until, well, it's been fairly easy to trade up until basically actually here. So as soon as we got this wick here, I told people to short all the way back to the range low. We longed back to the range high, and then we shorted. Actually, I round tripped like a bunch here because this is basically like when I found it a bit not difficult. Just I wasn't really sure what was going on with like this slow walk up on the daily. Um, and then obviously like we got the expansion out, and it was long up to here. My point being is like there were so many trades to take into this range, and then you apply that to like other assets across the board, Sol, ETH, Doge, etc. So many people get like uber fixated on like catching the big move, like like people want to short from like 78K all the way down to like 50K, that they lose sight on really easy trades in my opinion. And they also like they just let their ego get the best of them. It's like, me personally, like I like literally I went on Twitter, I went to my own server, I told people to short here. I told people to short at 76K. You know who didn't short? Me. I had the right analysis for the last 2 months, but I didn't execute the trade. So it's like, and I don't really care. It's like, who fucking cares? It's like, okay, I'll find a place to short, and I already have, right? I already have found a place to short, and it's like, that's what actually makes being basically like a giant mouthpiece on Twitter to being a real trader is, can you actually execute the trade and hold true to your thesis? So that's kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, I had a
Did they answer your question?
I had a pretty big social at that recent high, and unfortunately, I started shorting a little bit too early because I was looking at it as a little bit more of a horizontal range, even though it was actually a bit more of a bull flag. And
Hmm.
it was one of those ones where I started shorting just a bit too early. I think my average sold short price ended up being around 92 after, you know, basically adding from like 90 up to 94. And
Hmm.
it just started to look a little bit too much like it might actually like break up, and so I closed for a pretty big loss. But it literally ended up doing exactly what my initial plan was and going like right back to the range low. Like I was actually so mad at myself. Like it was terrible.
Yeah, man. The
It
thing
happens
is
though.
like trading, it's and I tell people this that come into this server, like I talk to them about trading, and they want to get into it. And I tell people like, listen, there's only so many things to learn in trading. Like you can only learn support resistance so many times. You can only learn about order blocks, breaker blocks, how to use a fib. There's only so many fucking things you can actually learn in trading. Which side tangent, I think a lot of the things that people learn are a bunch of repackaged bullshit. Like, like what the fuck is it? Like ICT, or ICP, ICT. I don't know if I can remember. I'm so tired. Like that. Well, Wyckoff's pretty important, but um, a lot of these gurus basically repackage the fundamentals and just sell you some fucking bullshit. And half the time it doesn't even work. Like, to be honest, like for people that made it this far into the podcast, like there's two things you need to know. You need to know, like if this is your asset, okay, you need to know where is your support, where is your resistance, and what is the market structure. Okay. That is like supply and demand. That is basically 90% of trading. Okay. If you cannot properly mark out your market structure, your swing highs, your swing lows, and if you cannot correctly identify your support resistance or your supply and demand, you will never be a good trader. It's literally like trying to trade meme coins on Jupiter Swap right now. Like it will never fucking work, right? Like you will get outcompeted by people trading on Axiom. Um, and I tell people like there's only so much to learn in trading. You can probably learn everything that, majority of what there is to learn in trading in like, a few weeks to a couple months, but it's actually then applying that, right? And that's where the mental comes in. It's like, and there's a few people that I work with right now, and it's like I always tell them, it's like, listen, emotions aren't a bad thing. Like so many people are like, oh, like emotions are the worst fucking thing you can have as a trader. And it's like, why? Like they're good if you know the result of having those emotions. And what I mean is when Bitcoin was up here at 76K, what were you feeling? And what was the result of it? Were you feeling crazy euphoric and therefore you didn't take a short? Were you feeling scared and therefore you didn't take a short? Were you feeling like, oh, this is the breakout and I'm crazy, like, happy, excited, whatever, and it's going to 80K, so you took a long? Like, it's not bad to have these emotions. It's just important because when you understand what you're feeling, especially at like key levels, you understand, oh, you know what? Every time it comes into a key level, I kind of get a little scared. And then usually it works out. And I'm feeling that way right now. And you know what? Because of that, I'm just going to stick with my system and I'm going to execute the trade and see what happens. And guess what? Most of the time, it works out. So I don't believe any of that bullshit that like emotions aren't a good thing. And it's like what you said. It's like you were feeling a certain way, you didn't execute the trade, and then did what you were thinking of. And that's, it's good that you recognize that. And I would say, if you want to take trading seriously, I would start mapping down and noting how you feel at certain levels and how that affects your decision because you're human. You can't strip away your emotions. You should embrace them and just recognize that, yeah, you know what, like every time I feel XYZ, ABC happens. So, and it's a good way to identify that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think like at the end of the day, trading almost always inevitably ends up just being like you versus yourself as opposed to you versus the market. And I completely agree with what you said earlier about not being able to predict necessarily where the market's going to go, but you can control how you react to it level to level. And so, yeah, again, like I get a lot of people asking me, how do you feel about the market, like total outlook over the next however long? And like, yeah, I might lean a certain way, but in reality, I'm always going to just be trading it level to level. And I believe that you're not always going to time like the full move from one range to the next range and hold it on to even the next one. And to be honest, I don't even think that's the most optimal way to trade, right? Like, I don't think you need to be trading every few hours and every day, but there's also so many trades to be made swinging from range low to range high, and the like risk that you can have by, you know, setting a couple percentage stop like above and below those ranges in case there are deviations, but being open-minded to re-entering them, if like re-entering the trade to the opposite side of the range if you accept back into it, for example, which, like, I think you've seen like so many times on, Bitcoin, Sol, ETH, etc., like within these ranges. um there's just, yeah, there's so much opportunity to trade these things. I just think that the more you try to like scalp these things every day, the higher the basically variance on your mistakes.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is it's definitely not optimal to be on the charts 24/7. I tell people like, and listen, everyone has a different trading style, but you basically need to pre-plan your trades and just be patient. Like, you know what I do? Like, for example, like right now, I have which I haven't even done yet because I literally hopped from one stream to this. Um, but there's only like a couple of POIs I'm looking at for Bitcoin. It's like I literally missed this long. I was waiting for it for like the last um actually for the last couple of days. I literally got front ran by like $100 on my limit order. And I don't really chase. I don't really care. It's like, you know what? It is what it is. If price decides to come up to here, which is like my next POI, like around on the lower time frame, like around 68.3 ish, I'll take a short. If not, my next POI is going to be waiting to basically, I go on 4 hour here, to basically waiting to get a 4 hour close below this candle. And as soon as we do, I know price will retest and I'll just short all the way down to 63K. And those are the only two trades I'm looking at. It's like, you know, price can do whatever it wants to do. It's going to hit one of these POIs. And like until then, like I'm very, very comfortable and very like just patient. And the other thing I tell people too is like, you don't only have to trade one thing, like, and I talk about this all the time. Like Doge has been like the easiest thing to trade in my opinion in like the last month. Basically, like anytime it's come down here and test the yearly, it pretty much always bounces. And like literally, once again, if you look, we once again wicked into it and we bounced. Like this was a very easy long. If I go on gold, for example, if I go look on the daily, um, as soon as we lost this major support here, as soon as we slice through this is when I opened my short. I literally opened a short right on right around here, and I targeted the range low. You look at ETH, you look at, so like there's other assets to trade. Like you don't have to just trade one. And when one is basically just like chopping about, being gay, there's probably another asset that's coming into a POI. And the important thing is just like as a trader that I've learned, especially, and this is something that I have always struggled with in trading, and I still do. Like it's just chasing trades. Like you see other people win because their system is a little bit different than yours, and they have slightly different POIs, and you see them winning, and now it makes you FOMO, and you basically want to chase a trade, and you take 3 L's in a row. you know, it's very important that if you have a system that wins and it wins consistently, who gives a fuck what anyone else does? Like, I don't really care. And I talk about this also all the time. People ask me, like, yo, Tack, what are your opinions on this person and that person and this person? I'm like, dude, first off, I don't even know who the fuck these people are. And second off, why would I care? Like, I already know my own performance. Like, I know how much money I make, I know how much money I lose. And I don't really care if like Trump himself tells me to long. Like if it's not in my system and it's not telling me that I should long, I'm not going to long. Like I'm just not going to take a trade. And I think that's the other thing. Like people pay too much attention to other people and what they do, and they use them too much as confluence. And I think that's a really bad thing to do, especially when you yourself have a good system. I think your number one confluence should always be yourself and what your own system is telling you to do.
Yeah, no, I honestly I completely agree. Like, if you try to steal things from other people, it might not actually work with like your mentality. You need to play around your own strengths, and find a system that works for you. And like once you understand most of the basics, then I think it's just about like back testing it and kind of like visualizing yourself how you're going to react in those kind of scenarios where price reaches where you think it's going to reach, because your emotions are going to be high, and hopefully you can have the conviction to, hold on to your bulls until it reaches your take profit.
100%. Also, like this is so late in the server. I probably should have led with this. I am like literally autistic, so I tend to ramble a lot and I go off on like so many side tangents. So I'm so sorry because I already know I've done it like a couple times. It's just like I literally can't help it. I have so many things going on in my brain that I try to like explain one thing and then I'm like, oh wait, he probably doesn't understand like this context. And then I, talk about that and it's
Don't worry, bro. It's
my
all
bad.
good. That's the whole point of like these long forms. Like, and I think that's why I kind of enjoy doing it with traders as well, because hopefully the guys that are listening to this are the kind of guys who actually want this level of detail and are interested enough and are trying to learn enough to actually listen all the way through most of the time. You know what I mean? So don't worry. I'm sure the
Yeah.
people who want to hear you ramble are gonna hear you ramble, and like that's part of the game.
Nice.
But we
Love
can
it.
we can wrap it up here though. That way we don't drag on any longer. But it's good fun anyway. I
Oh,
appreciate
you're
you
good. I mean,
a
dude, if
lot
you
for
have any
coming
other
on.
questions or anything you want me to cover, like I'm always happy to do it. I just want to see people win. Like that's the whole reason I'm still here. Like I made plenty of bread. I continue to make plenty of bread, but I see like a lot of people that are also just my friends that have been in the meme coin space and they transition over to perps. And that analogy I gave in the beginning, it's like they just don't, they don't take it seriously. It's just like a tingle in their balls. They're gonna long here, they're gonna short here. I will cover one thing too, and this is just like a perfect example of basically trading without fundamentals, and it's basically Tau. Like this has been the talk of the town on CT for I don't know, like 2 3 weeks, and it's really funny because whenever people start DMing me about something, whether it's literally any asset, I already know it either hit a crazy range high or a range low. um, And I posted literally like right here on this candle on my Twitter. I would just be a little bit cautious of Tau. Not that I don't think it won't go higher, because I actually do think it will. I wouldn't be surprised if it moves up into the high 400s, maybe just pops out to like 500. Um, but like so many people trade narrative, and I see so many people, even people like that are my friends, that have this piece of shit in spot, and I'm like, why? Like people don't realize that this basically moved from range low up to a local range high, right? And this was the first rejection, a significant one. And it's like, this happens time and time again where people basically trade narrative. Like I don't even know half the narrative on this piece of shit, but like these are the same people that basically forgot that like Eric Trump was fucking buying ETH at 5K. Like like this game isn't made for you to win. Like this is literally, for people that don't know Tau, it's literally a low volume KOL farm. Like this shit is going to zero. It's just a matter of when. Like I'm not trying to like shit on people's bags. I'm just trying to
I mean, it's
from
just
a
like
fundamental
at the end of the
perspective.
day, it's an altcoin in a wider bear market, and it's just having like a
Yeah.
counter trend uh, rally that realistically, like market structure is still bearish, and there's probably not much reason for it to go a lot higher.
Well, dude, like look at it over the last year. Like it's failed basically since it broke down to ever reclaim a high, like a significant high over this range. So it's like, okay, I tell people like, you know, um, is the like the RR in my opinion is not really worth it to long here. It's much greater to short, which I did. I already trailed my stops. In fact, I think literally that wick just stopped me out. Funnily enough, but then I tell people it's like, okay, like let's say Tau does move even higher and it moves to 500. The RR is definitely not worth it to long here. It's like look at this historically. It's never really made it over range high, locally speaking. The chances that it does it, in a essentially what is a bear market, because I do believe like we're in a bear market. It's it's very low odds. You know what I mean? Very low odds.
How do you feel about Hyperliquid right now? Because for example, you said you were actually like shorting gold and stuff. Like, I think it's pretty interesting now
Mhm.
that you can trade all of these things on Hyperliquid, and it's probably one of the only charts that both like from a visual perspective is outperforming, and also fundamentally it's doing so for fundamental reasons.
Mm. Yeah, this is the thing that I tell people. Um, so whenever you are trying to make a like macro prediction, I even tell people this: Bitcoin in reality actually has pretty little data to work with. Like we've only had a few cycles, and you compare it to TradFi and anything over there. Um, like majority of things in crypto do not actually have enough data to make a accurate or even relatively accurate high time frame forecast. Really, the only thing that is close to Bitcoin would be ETH. And I look at hype and it's like, okay, well, this piece of shit has only been out for a year ish, and so I don't like making very like long term calls or forecasts like for hype. But we did get a weekly close below this high, and when that happened, I did start shorting this. In my opinion, like, listen, hype as a platform is fucking awesome. I personally trade on hype. I think it's great. I think the team is great. I love what they're doing over there. Um, Great platform. Unfortunately, their coin is not very great. Like this chart is pretty bearish. I'm not gonna lie. I'm personally like in a swing short, and I am targeting. There's a 5-day OB here at like 24 to 26, and there's one day like even lower at like 21. I wouldn't be surprised personally. Let's say we fast forward, you come back to this podcast in 3 to 6 weeks. And I would not be surprised if hype is right around the mid 20s. I'm not saying it can't go higher. Like absolutely, it had a crazy run up back last year, but I do think just because of the situation we're in, macro wise, like with the market, Bitcoin, et cetera, et cetera, I think it's unlikely hype. If it were to move higher, I think it's unlikely it moves much higher than this wick. But just based on the fact that we got a weekly close below this high, I'm not too bullish on hype as a whole. I'm very bullish on using their platform though, but not so much on the coin.
Yeah, totally fair. But I think now that they've added S&P,
Hmm.
perps, I think given it's still in the grand scheme of things, right? It's like it's an altcoin, and fundamental things can push it higher, right? Like, if for whatever reason there starts to become a lot of this whole like 24/7 narrative around trading things like maybe the S&P on Hyperliquid, and it is able to get a lot of that kind of like commodity um, bid, similar to how it ran up a lot initially when gold was running, and then with oil. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets like, I don't know, a second run there. The only thing is, I think it's like generally more unlikely because right now the S&P is kind of nuking, and let's be real, like traders are usually always long. So I think like people aren't really going to be trading it as much right now if it's not doing well. But I don't know. Maybe they try to like buy the dip and they lose money. Hype makes a bunch of money, and then I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, well, listen, I am. bullish on hype as a platform. And I would not be surprised. Obviously, like I'm fairly confident actually like hype has another run up, in the next bull. I just don't think that's now. And it's like, listen, as a trader, I'm not going to trade on narrative or what might happen, because this kind of stuff has happened time and time again, right? Where it's like, okay, you know, you have people trading Bitcoin, and it's like, the best example is just Bitcoin. It's like you come up here and it's like, bro, governments are buying, BlackRock is buying your bags, ETFs are coming, fucking governments are putting it in their reserve, like all this shit. And it's like, yeah, well, look what happened, right? And it's just like any other market. Like you know what's so funny? Okay. It's like if you're trading meme coins and Elon makes a tweet, right? That itself is a narrative. And then you have like, you know, you can think of whatever like, bad or good, but like let's say, KOLs buy like, scented buys, Eurus buys, people that bring volume, right? Like people talk about that. So that's a narrative push, that's a catalyst, if you will. Um, then you have, I don't know, like CZ retweets it. Okay, that's a catalyst. Where do all these meme coins end up? Basically at zero, right? So you take that same exact thing, which is just the same principles and logic applied in a much smaller financial market to a much larger financial institution like crypto and TradFi. And instead of the variables being like CZ retweeted, you have Trump saying he's going to buy, or Eric saying he's going to buy ETH, BlackRock buying your bags, all this stuff. Guess where all this stuff eventually ends up? Not at zero, but like you get my point. It basically has a massive pullback. And it's the same thing like over and over and over again, right? Like don't trade narrative, and also like all of the narrative stuff always comes out at the pico top or the pico bottom. Like all the war FUD was literally at like the local bottom for Bitcoin, and then it pumped, right? Um, Same thing with Tau, for example, like wherever I put Tau chart, like all of the crazy like bullish news with like Nvidia and all this other bullshit was literally at like Pico local top. Like, it's just it's the same thing every single time, every single cycle, every single top and bottom. Doesn't matter if it's like a meme coin, doesn't matter if it's a fucking major institution. There are some exceptions, like obviously like ETFs will have a longer lasting impact than a lot of the other bullshit that's happened this cycle. But my point being is that whenever an asset is, at a range high or near it or above it, like locally speaking, or it's at a range low, you will always see headlines of crazy FUD at the bottom and crazy euphoric shit at the top. Like, I don't know if you noticed this, but a nice way to mark a or to spot a macro reversal, like more not macro, but more like a mid time frame reversal, is look at when exchanges start freezing. Okay, every single time, every time there is a major crash, exchanges will start freezing. Whether it's Coinbase right here, whether it's what the fuck happened here? It was I think actually Binance was here, Binance and Robinhood. Every single time there's a major crash that marks basically a local bottom, exchanges always start freezing the bread. And you will get FUD like that every single top and bottom. It's just different. It's just slightly different every time.
Yeah, I mean, you always get like those big like fundamental things, and if like, obviously like I'm sure like you could do a whole another thing about just like order flow and looking at like different unwinds on different exchanges and stuff. But I think then we'll be here like all day. um, but yeah, no, I agree. I think let's leave it there. Otherwise, we're gonna drag this on. We're gonna drag on way too much. But
That's fine.
this
That's
was
good,
this
man.
was dope. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course, man. Uh, like, thank you for having me.
Any closing things
Like
you
I said, like
wanna
in the
like
beginning, I
direct
just
people
like
to,
to
like your Twitter and stuff or anything?
wait. What's up?
Anything you want to direct people to other than your Twitter?
Um, Twitter, and then obviously like just my group. So the group I run it's all free. Everything in there is free. Even like the VIP section is just referral gated.
but nothing actually costs money. Funnily enough, we're actually doing me and the other owner, because I run it with Fi. We're in the next probably like couple weeks, we're launching like just a free mentorship. It's all free. We take the time to like record videos, so we're like explaining all like the basics, obviously like MS, supply and demand, all that stuff, and then like teaching our own style. We're gonna launch the mentorship. We'll probably take on like 4 to 8 people a month, and also like the people that are not as well off, that they don't really have a lot of money. Once we see that they're good and like they work through the mentorship and stuff, we're gonna buy them like probably like a 100K breakout account or something. Um, but yeah, I would just hop in there like if you're interested in perps. Pretty much like all the calls that we make, I know especially myself and Fi, like we always add a context to our calls. We're not just like posting a signal. Because obviously, like I know people will just join to copy the signals to make bread. Like, you can't avoid that. But for the percentage of people out there that actually want to learn and take this more seriously, I do like to focus more on the educational content in there. We had a whole week, like literally before I hopped on, this interview, I was doing the weekly stream in there. So yeah, just check out the X, like my X, check out the server. Anyone that wants to DM me that has questions on perps or whatever, just shoot me a DM. Uh, yeah, nothing else
Awesome.
really.
All right. Well, I appreciate. Hope people enjoyed, and thanks for coming on, bro.
Yeah, thank you, man.